Welcome, everybody, to the Tommy Christie Show. Today, I'm joined by a guest and a friend, somebody who's actually been a coach for me. He was my coach for 2 months. His name is Nick Sweeney. Although, if you're in the Twitter sphere, X sphere, you might know him as Based Bra, the artist formerly known as Based Bra. For some context, he's a former Division One, former Division One national champion skier, a current performance coach, a writer, and I'd say in my own words, a based holistic health nut, among many other things. Nick, man, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the intro.
Hey, you got it. You got it. So, Nick, tell me a little bit about your prior name on X, Base Bra. Why Base Bra? And then why did you choose to come out of the Anon closet?
Well, about a year ago, 14 months ago, I just started schizo posting on X sort of as a self-reflective thing. And I just saw a bunch of accounts that were like something, something bra. And I saw also the vernacular of based being thrown around.
Mm-hmm.
And I intuitively kind of realized what based was, but I also saw that based was not really this term that you can pin down, which was intriguing. And it ultimately is a term of agreement, commonly used as just a subjective term of agreement, subjective truth. I believe that based is a term that you say when you believe something is moving in the direction of truth.
Mm.
And to me, it seemed a little bit like an opportunity. The name based bra rolls off the tongues quick, 2 syllables, easily memorable. And I was like, I'm going to just be an Anon account and just kind of start putting my thoughts out because it seems like X at the time was Twitter is a very intellectual platform that a lot of interesting ideas. Really, the impetus was Elon fucking bought it. And
Mm.
I was like, okay, because I was very aware of the antics that had been going on with the suppression of free speech, the media, all of the, you know, regulatory capture that was going on all of these different levels. And it was very attractive. It was like, well, what is going on X? And maybe now is a good time to stop being a consumer and start creating and sort of inject myself into the conversation and see what happens. And I feel that I'm a level headed dude with a lot of experience in different realms. And I felt like, you know what, let's come at this from a total service oriented perspective and see if we can help people, see if what I say resonates. And it did. At first, it was me just kind of notes to myself. And then it started picking up quick. And I was like, oh, let's do something with this, I suppose. But I was
Mm.
still in this time in my life where I had a ton of different things going on. I moved to Austin, Texas. I had a new job. I had retired from skiing a year and a half prior. And I liked the freedom that the mask provided. So I could express myself in any way, no repercussions. I didn't have my name behind it. My boss would never know that it was me or a future employer. And that was kind of a big reason why I wanted to remain anonymous was future employment opportunities. And then also like my egoic fear of what other people thought, approval, scarcity mindset. And that was, yeah, lurking in the corners of my psyche. And it took a while to begin illuminating those different types of things and realizing the motives I had for a lot of things I did in my life. And based, though, I think is in the direction of truth, whatever that may be. And I was like, fuck it, let's define this term in real time with my account.
Mm.
And it came to be like based in your core. What's your core truth based on Mother Earth? Based and grounded, I think are synonyms. And that terms, I saw it popping up more and more and more. I had times where I was like, maybe bass is going out of style. Maybe it's making a revival. I don't know. I don't care. I'm just going to keep rolling. And that was kind of the first year, was me just experimenting, speaking my truth, shit posting about valuable things, doing deep dives on topics. I was just following my curiosity and my authenticity and allowing myself like to really just not hold back and calibrate my reality to who I thought I was. Which brings us to basically last week when I came out of the
What?
closet.
Yeah. No, it's a funny phrase. And there was one quote before I double click on that I recently I heard it this morning. I was listening to a podcast. It was Carnivore Aurelius on Rick Rubin's show, and he brought up this Thomas Sowell quote that I thought was so fitting for our podcast today. Thomas Sowell has a quote where he says, "There's only two ways of telling the complete truth: anonymously and posthumously." So I think that there is like kind of a power to not having your name out there. And yeah, that I just thought was a cool quote. But in terms of your decision to come out of the closet anonymously, why did you choose to do that?
Yeah, to be clear, I'm straight as an arrow. I had a lot of reasons for not doing it, a lot of reasons that I wanted to do it. Really, I had made up my mind this fall. I was like, at some point, the bass draw thing's probably got to end because I'm contorting myself in any way I want to monetize this and actually like make this something that I do. It's going to all be then having to follow the brand of based. And the problem is most people don't know what based is, nor will they. And it also, if you do know what it is, you have a different idea yourself. It's super subjective. It's not like saying peak performance program. You understand what that means right away. It'd be like the based blueprint. What the fuck is that? And
yeah.
So I was contorting myself and tormenting myself. How am I supposed to do this delicately too? Because I'm not trying to alienate my audience. And I'm also, I want to do something that is just very methodical and thought out. And my biggest hang up was like, I work in an oil and gas startup, and I may really follow that route more heavily than a creator route, at least for the interim. I've always viewed the creator route, or just this X thing. Once things caught speed last year, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for like 10 years and actually have this long-term view of it and go from there. I took the time and was convicted in my decision to come out, but I was like, I need a fucking photo. That was the big hang up for a good month and a half. I don't want to have some performative, done up, lame ass photo that a lot of these guys have. I also don't want to have some janky little mirror selfie. And as a coach, it was interesting because I was like, do I even need to show my face? Because I have people coming to me, DMing me. I have more clients than I can handle. So what's the issue here? And ultimately it felt like Bass Bra was this persona. And it was a year of metamorphosis of like, well, figuring out who I am congruently with this persona. And it came to the place where I was like, the persona is no longer Bass Bra. It can be more streamlined, and my vision, my message will be more impactful with my face and my name behind it all. So I was like, fuck it, let's do this. And I just decided one day, a lot of this was just intuition and getting to a place in my life where like I could trust myself and trust that like Nick Sweeney's the right call, not Nick, not Nick Bra, not Base Bra, not Nick and a fucking fake last name. Like, so many people gave me advice and I am appreciative for all of it. But at the end of the day, who do you want to serve? Who do you want to be? It all has to just come from within, and you can't give your power away to anyone else or what other people might think of you. And then, you know, what you stand to make or lose based off a decision. What do you want to do? And I feel like I got to a place through a lot of work being meditation and discipline and gaining clarity and letting my intuition emerge. And all of that came to a place where I found a photo and I was like, fuck it, let's do this. It feels right, feel aligned, let's go. And I have felt more empowered and believe that this is going to be an accelerant to my message, which is what I care about most, because I'm not in it for followers or fame. I'm in it for how big of an impact can I have and in what way. And I believe I have the ability to wield a benevolent message in a very powerful way. So all of those, all the convictions piled into one pot, and here I am.
Nice, man. That's a great answer. I remember, I don't know, I think it was the first month we worked together when we had a conversation about it. And like, I remember I was one of those people that was advocating for you to come out of the closet as well, anonymously. And I'm so glad you did. I think long term, it's only going to be really positive for you, your brand, the service that you're looking to provide the world. Because I really think, like, I know you, man. I know that your focus is all around service. It's all around helping raise the vibration and like the consciousness level of the people around you. So how do you see that mission in your coaching business? Like, how do you feel like you've been able to help people on a coaching level recently? Do you feel like that's improving?
Yeah, absolutely. In the past month, I've seen clients have transformations that really surprised me, actually. And it's interesting. And I love coaching because, I mean, through my ski racing career, I had 7 different coaches. 2 of them were good. The rest of them, frankly, detrimental to my career and my mental health and my confidence. And coaches are just so powerful because I believe that you have this unique relationship where it's not a therapist. You're not a therapist slapping a framework, psychological framework on someone's life and someone's desires, passions. Like, you get the teacher as well as slapping a curriculum on you. But as a coach, you're paid for your frequency, I believe. You're paid, at least in the work I'm doing, because I'm not doing, it's not as specific, and a lot of it is intangible, but a lot of it is the most powerful type of work you can do, which is, how can I unleash this untamed force from within versus giving my power away to an externality where it's like, when I take this course, I'll lose 30 pounds and feel good about myself. Or when I do this course and make a bunch of money, then I'll feel good about myself. It's all about presence here and now. How can I embody my best version at all times? How can I sit in the seat of the present moment where my personal power is? How can I have this upwelling of intuition and clarity and sit in that seat of presence and make decisions in my life? And cultivating these things is really fulfilling to me. And it's also like the path that I've been on. So a lot of my clients are 5 steps behind me. I don't resonate with coaches that coach people on things they don't actually practice anymore. They're not on the path anymore. They're coaching people on weight loss when now they're on a different program from a different coach or whatever. I like to be like, look, this is exactly what I did. This is exactly what I would have done if I was in your shoes at your age. These are the landmines I stepped on. And this is what I'd recommend doing and avoiding. And then a lot of it is just like beating these concepts into the psyche and taking the governor off of the engine of growth that we all have. And so ways that I've been doing this, it's a tough question because every person's different. That's the beauty of coaching. I take each person's unique experience, unique desires, and we are extremely hyper personalized, hyper customized, hyper flexible because some people react differently. One person on Twitter could tell you a lesson and it doesn't resonate, but another person could tell you in a different way and you make 10 years of progress in one sentence. And that's what the game I'm playing is like, how does his mind work? How can I best resonate with him and get through to him? And I'm not some rah-rah coach or it's not so much about that. It's about where are the limitations? Okay, let's illuminate these parts of your psyche because it's paradoxical, but it's all in the mind, but you're not the mind. And so you're dealing with these concepts that take a lot of work and a lot of time. The neurons got to wire and fire together a lot over a good time period for you to have that transformation. But I know that I'm at a level now that I didn't think was ever possible. A lot of it is due to coaches I've had, courses I've taken, notably Lee St. John, who I've been working with for a year. He's also on Twitter. Super, super powerful human. And I told him last night, I was like, I didn't think I was ever going to live in a mind like this. I never thought it was possible to be this at peace, but also ferocious in my actions, where it's like I can hold these two things at the same time and be present and accepting and aware and loving and forgiving and believing, trusting, but then also just a savage in the acceptance and then the action. And so that's where I want to get guys to, but everyone's different. I got guys that need to help with addictions. Some just want to cultivate, a lot of them have the semen retention, sexual energy cultivation that they want to unlock, which I think is massive. Some are breath work. Some are just running training plans. And I can that's where it's fine to help with so many different things, but I'm concerned about getting to the core. What the fuck do you want to do with your life? Why are you doing anything at all? And we get crystal clear on that type of stuff. So you get your North Star. It's called Polaris. You get your North Star very explicit, but then you detach from the outcome and you're accepting of this present moment. And you go from CEO, all right, I know my North Star, to systems engineer. Okay, how do I design a day that I can replicate over and over and move towards generally where I want to go and accept that it's not going to play out how I want it or how I think it will, but I have faith that I'm moving in the direction that is best. And so that's a long-winded answer of saying kind of how I view it all and how I've been operating and the way I've been getting results.
Long-winded is the name of the game, my friend. You're on a podcast, you're my guest, and I appreciate all of that. To kind of dive into that further, because I'm really fascinated by coaching in general, what percentage of the work that you do would you say is analytical? What percentage is intuitive? To crudely put everything into those two boxes, more or less.
Amazing question. I believe that it's hard to quantify that.
Yeah.
But I would say that overall, I've been moving more and more towards the intuitive side of things and away from the analytical. The analytical, I'm leaning on frameworks that have worked for me in the past, exercises, practices, disciplines, challenges, that sort of analytical. It's like when you're talking to me as a client, I'm not in the background calculating analytically. I'm not. I'm fully present and listening, and I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say next. I'm just taking it all in the best that I can. The more present I can be, the better I will be as a coach. I have full faith in that and trust in
Mm.
myself that I will know intuitively what the best prescription will be. But I will only know the best prescription if I'm really fucking present and really listening. And that's what I get paid for more than anything, more than the Polaris course book that I have, more than the breathwork protocols or any of the other protocols. It's like people just want to really be heard and have someone that has no agenda. They're not their friend from high school that wants to like secretly see them not do as well as themselves or whatever. Like, I'm here to fucking help. And we're going to get into the dirty shit, the good shit, and we're going to work through this together. I'm in your corner. I'm your soundboard, and I'm as unbiased as I possibly can be, only because I am. The intention when I get on a call is just presence. And I have a pre-call ritual that really sets my mind right for that. But it's like, take it very, very seriously listening to someone, which is lost usually in society, like, or just like social interactions in general. You go out to a bar with your bros or your friends and people are drinking, but it's like some are on the phone, some are looking around at the bar, some are like listening, but listening with the intention of like the other social dynamics. Like, I want to sound smart, so I'm going to say this thing that you just reminded me of. It's like, no, we're here, you and me, and you're paying me for that frequency. I'm here listening.
Hmm. So it sounds like it's overwhelmingly intuitive,
Yeah.
and sometimes like when you tune in, the analytical like solutions and prescriptions stem out of the intuition.
Like, an example of when it gets analytical is when I have a client say, okay, my running training plan's been going really well, but I kind of have these shin splints and my pain is at an X out of 10. And I'm in this periodized block of the training plan. The race is X amount of days away. I've been sleeping this much. I drank that alcohol 3 days ago. I ran an 18 miler 6 days ago. So then I'm like, okay, calculating, prescribed, whatever that ends up being. That's when that is. But that's still intuition that I've learned from the 15 years of endurance training I did. So there's intuition in that. That's like learned intuition, but there's still an analytical component. But I would say like 15% of the work I do is analytical. The rest is like intuitively what's worked for me, what's worked for other people. And then it's easier when, because I will prescribe something that doesn't end up jiving and it doesn't work. It's like, okay, well, let's go back to the drawing board and see. That's great information because now we know. Now we can take it in this other direction that I think, because I analyzed it, okay, if that didn't work for him, then let's try this because it's going to be maybe the way that his brain works, how he operates in life. So yeah, it's a balance for sure. I'm not super conscious of it. I try to take it from the intuitive approach more than anything, though. I believe that's where all of our power lies.
And just as you say that, I realized that this art of podcasting, it's very intuitive as well. All of the best podcasters that I've ever studied and listened to are fully present. And that's how I try to handle this as well. Like, I try to do research. Like, I did research for this show. Like, I read your tweets, but at the same time, I'm friends with you and I know you. So I had an idea of how I wanted to approach this. And I kind of threw out all my notes, like in the actual show, to just tune into who you are as a human. And it's a lesson that it was hard for me to learn that, because I do think the status quo way to communicate in our culture is, especially as men, like a lot of our conversations that I grew up having were like very competitive. Like, you're talking about sports, you want to have the best opinion, you want to say the smartest thing that really like brings down the house.
Yep.
And I've learned that when you try to do that, like nobody wins. Like you don't win because you're not listening to anybody. And the other people, like let's say that you do have the best point, then the other guy that you're competing with, so to speak, is going to feel hurt, and they're going to feel like their ego is damaged. So I think we really have to release all desire to like one up people, and we just have to tune in. We have to be absolutely present in the conversations that we have. And I learned that through improv comedy. Actually, I took like 2 years worth of classes, and I kept on trying to be like the funny guy, and it just wasn't working. And then I just stopped trying to be the funny guy, and I would just be patient and listen. And then I started being the funny guy because I was actually like responding in real time, to people. So what role does communication play in coaching? It seems like it's the most important thing, right?
Yeah, I have always believed that communication is paramount. I believe 99% of problems could be avoided with proper communication. And to your point, I mean, that just reminded me of when I was in college with a bunch of skiers. They're Olympic. Everyone's super hyper competitive in everything. You can tell how competitive someone is, how much of a competitor they are in what they do in something that means absolutely fucking nothing. So like, you can shovel the yard quickest. Like shit's just that's the world I was in, and that's how the conversations would go. Is like ego gets wrapped into it, and then you're all operating. Maybe not all, but I would be operating in a conversation from ego, where I want to be right, or I want to defend some argument, or I want to have an intelligent thing to say. And you can fall into that trap when you're coaching, because you have this like, like a year ago when I was first really starting out, I felt like I had to say something smart. I have to give this person a gem that will change the way they think with every single thing I say. And that ultimately you're moving backwards, and you're not embodying what you truly believe, and you're not operating from a place of, it's not about me at all. If you're not actively listening, then it's ultimately all about you. It's ultimately operating from fear of, will this client like me? Will he accept me? Will this girl think I'm cool? Will this businessman think that I'm a good person to do business with? And I've realized that all of this is about communication. All of this is about your presence and your ability to just be there and fully tuned in, as you said. Because for example, like I do a lot of investor meetings right now, and these guys with millions of dollars, they don't put money into a business. They're not investing in a business. They're investing in a person that they trust, that they believe can be advantageous for them and it's not just on a bank account metric, although that's like the reason the meeting's happening. But it's like, do I want to do business with? Because business is ugly and it can get real. It's war. So who am I going to war with here in business? And then it's the same as dating. It's like, if you go up to a girl and you have an agenda, you're not operating from a place of like, whatever, I'm detached from any outcome. I'm just here to get to know you. They'll smell that too. And I believe women are highly attuned to feeling these subtle intentions and energies, because it's almost, I want to say it's almost a defense mechanism in some ways, as it is for everyone. And as it manifests in coaching, if I can detach from any outcome, where the more I really, really want a client to do really well and have some massive transformation, the harder it'll be for all parties involved. If I can detach from the outcome and be like, look, we already, call one, we explicitly wrote out the mission, your goals, the one big thing you're focusing on. It's all written down. So I don't need to fucking think about it. I don't need to harp on it. It's about right here, right now. How can we navigate this together? And communication skills, actively listening, because that's what we're talking about. You could call it real, just sheer presence, which is what it is at the derivative of it. But like Carnegie would say, it's just active listening and really being there, really being present. And if you're not present when someone shakes your hand and tells you their name, that's when you forget it. When you're not present and you look at your calendar and you're not present, that's when you miss a fucking meeting. It's the same thing. It's like, how tuned in am I to right here, right now? Because ultimately the calendar is in the future, but right here, right now, I'm looking at the calendar, if that makes sense. Like, you need to ingrain what you just said to me as a client or on a podcast. And I trust myself and believe in myself and accept that as you're talking to me, I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm fully accepting that I have no idea what the fuck I'm going to say.
Me neither.
I accept and I trust that if I can listen fully, I will have something more valuable to say. And that's where that comes into coaching. If I'm right here, right now, I will be able to help the client better. And it's almost like if you're a creator writing online, accept, the harder you try to go viral, the more hard it is, the more difficult it is. And when you're writing, it's a profound exercise and I love it. And I found that through the bass draw thing, but like, I don't know the next word that's going to be penned down. I have no idea, but I'm following this like frequency, this vibration, I'm just a conduit of this information and knowledge. And I've been operating that way in my writing for a while. And I will never stop because it's the best way to do it. If you have an agenda, that's when your tweet flops. That's when your writing sucks. That's when your business plan is shitty and people get a bad smell and run for the hills.
I totally agree. A word that was coming up for me there's a lot of threads to pull there, like an infinite amount of threads, but I'm going to pull the last one just because it's top of mind. Like Rick Rubin, I'm going to talk about him again because he's a very interesting and inspiring character for me and human. He talks a lot about being a channel. I think all creativity, whether it's a podcast or a piece of writing or whatever art, insert art here, you are simply a conduit and a channel for another dimension, really, is the way that I like to think about it, like something higher than this plane of existence. I've been reading the Bible and Jesus talks quite a bit about how he is in this world, but he is not of this world. His dominion is not in this world. It's somewhere else. And I think that whenever we put our art out to the world, if it's inspired art and if it's from a good place, like we're literally showing people like a higher plane of being. Does that perspective resonate, Nick?
Yes, absolutely. That's how I try to operate. And Rick Rubin, I've read his book. I listened to some of his podcasts and it all was like, oh shit, that's what I've been doing. And I'm like, wow, okay. It was super assuring that like, that's how, because I believe a lot of things. I don't subscribe to religion at the moment fully. And I don't subscribe to any theory necessarily of like what all of this is. I accept that I don't fucking know and that no one really knows. And a concept I've been grappling with recently is that we're all part of one field. So this concept of I am not Nick. I am not a skier. I am not a schizo Twitter poster. I'm not Nick. I am this field. We're all one all-seeing eye, let's say. but we're all part of one field. It's all one field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think the ability comes from creative people, is that they're extremely open to receiving these things. And that's when you get into a writer's block or creative rut, is when you close up. The more open I can be, the more ideas come to me. And I believe that there's something about electromagnetism that's going on here. Like, there's an esoteric side of things where it's God. I do believe in God. And I believe in, source, even though I don't like that word as much. But like, God is a good way for me to frame my life, is I trust God. I accept God. I'm giving up my burdens in life to him. And congruently, this is all one living field in which we're electromagnetic beings. There's light and dark. There's good and bad. There's positive and negative electrons. And those electrons are behaving in such a way that's very similar on a planetary scale as in a cellular level. And we're swimming in a sea of electrons right now, positives and negatives. And then within the cells, there's these polarities between us. And I believe that this field contains information, and the information is not tied or constrained to a timeline. And yeah, it's infinite. It's an infinite field, and it's infinite information. And my theory that I've just been cooking up, that I talked about on a podcast the other day, but it's like, how did the Simpsons predict all of this shit? Well, I believe maybe they're just so creative that they're pulling things from different timelines and not even realizing it. Because when you have a creative idea, it didn't come from within you. I don't believe it came from within you. I believe that it came from this field, but you were open enough and you asked to receive it, and you received it, and then it can get morphed by your own psyche, experiences, material world aspects. And that's how the uniqueness of ideas can become created. And that's how everything that we are looking at right now became created. The computer, the microphone, the brilliant idea I read this morning, like all of that, I believe, came from a field, and you just sort of like, you grabbed it from the field and it came into you, and you are that channel of that electromagnetic information. So I've been really doing deep dives on light and electricity. And the more I learn about science, the more I learn about light, the more I learn about physics, the more it's so clear to me that something's going on here, and that there is this information out there, and also these emotions too. We don't know how, when a bunch of neurons get together in the brain, suddenly it becomes love or anger. We don't understand how those neurons work, and how it's not like in a traffic jam. I think in Homo Deus, he says Yuval Noah Harari, who's questionable guy, but
I've read his books. I think they're great, but I agree with you.
really great. But he's on the WEF, and he's got some whack things he's been propagating recently. But anyways, that's a tangent.
I saw Robert Breedlove post something about him recently.
Yeah. But in the book, he's like, well, when all the cars get together in a traffic jam, like, it doesn't suddenly create this emotion, but maybe it does on a subtle level too. It's like, you can keep going down this rabbit hole. Maybe there's a certain energy that's happening. Maybe that's going on there cumulatively. So, these are just theories, but that's kind of what I've been exploring in my own spiritual. It's a spiritual practice too. So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I just, when you were explaining that, have you seen the movie Avatar, like the first one?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you remember when, like, the little Avatar creatures, they're not little, but the Avatar creatures, they connect to the tree of life, like they have that little kind of like
Yeah.
tail. Yeah, I almost view creating art as that, except like we are connecting to, like you said, like there's so many different words, source, God, whatever you want to call it. And on that note, too, Stephen Pressfield, Stephen Pressfield,
Mm-hmm.
he wrote the War of Art, and there's this passage from Homer, the ancient Greek writer, called the Invocation of the Muse. And the way before Stephen Pressfield sits down to write, he reads the Invocation of the Muse by Homer, because he knows deep down that these words aren't coming from him. He knows that if he shows up every single day to write, then like he's just invoking the spirit, and sometimes the spirit doesn't want to come out, and there's always resistance to the spirit. Like we all feel it. It manifests itself in so many different ways for everybody. Like what does your resistance look like, Nick? Like when resistance shows up for you, how does it often manifest itself?
I believe that the ego is a powerful tool that can be used in a positive way, but I also think that when you're not aware of it and it goes off unchecked, as it does for me, that's where resistance comes. So I've kind of seen that just like anytime there's resistance going on, it's because of my own ego. It's because of my own thoughts, which aren't my own thoughts, but they're thoughts that are going
Mm-hmm.
on that are running rampant. And in Michael Singer's Untethered Soul, one of my favorite books, if not my favorite book, is
That's sitting right there, by the way.
fuck
That's
yeah.
that book.
He talks about, the concept of a roommate. If you had a roommate in your apartment that was talking like how the voice in your head is talking, you would want to kick him out within 30 fucking minutes. But we're
30
all,
seconds.
yeah, we're all living with that voice inside of our heads. And I know that when the resistance is coming up, it's from that egoic place, because that's where the fear comes in for me. That's where the need for approval comes in for me. That's where, and I can relate this to like when I was ski racing and I was not very skillful in the way that I was thinking about myself or my reality in general. I had the best races when I let go and I remained open as a receiver of more energy, even, but just open and receiving and detached from the outcome. When I attached to the outcome and cared a lot about winning that race, the more I cared about it, the more pressure I was putting on myself, the more I was closing up, and the worse I would perform. And that's how I relate it to nowadays. If I'm super attached to the outcome, whether it's like if I really need this investor to agree and to put money in, I really need this tweet to go viral. That's when the resistance comes in. I really need to know if this girl is the right girl for me. And the work I've been doing is just I accept that I don't fucking know. I accept that I am at where I'm at, and I accept that everything is imaginary except for this present moment. So a big shift in my ski racing career was when I went from goal oriented of like, I really need to win, to process goal oriented. I really need to be present. I really need to have like the plan set out the next day, or I would visualize the whole plan the next down to like, I'm going to take a shit and then I'm going to eat this exact food. And then I'm going to put my clothes on in this order. And then I'm going to drive to the race and then blah, 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 blah. And then in the race, where like if I'm thinking about the result, that leads into, well, what are people going to think of me if I don't do well in this race, et cetera, versus the hill right in front of me that I have to, okay, well, I got to use this technique. What's my breathing like right now? Where are my legs? What's my shin angle? All of it would culminate in me being shaving seconds. And that was a huge paradigm shift for me. Is the resistance comes from that egoic place of needing the approval, being afraid of not doing well, being afraid of not being loved. Because I think that's what it is for everyone. At the derivative is like, you're afraid of not being loved. We all want to be loved. And if we can't love ourselves, which I didn't when I was a ski racer in college, then I'm giving my power away and needing to be loved by fans and onlookers and different coaches, because it would manifest as like, before college, the racing would be, I need to get this result in order to get the coach's attention that I want to ski for. I need to get this result in order to go on the U23 Scandinavian trip, et cetera, et cetera. And that's such a dangerous negative feedback loop to fall into. And that's, I'll find myself doing that right now. Resistance, I've pinpointed the trigger in being this startup. Resistance will come up when I have overwhelming amount of work, or I have a piece of like a PowerPoint deck that I'm afraid of it not being good. I'm afraid of my boss not approving of it. I'm afraid of it being the reason that some investor doesn't put money into us. And that has been a trigger. And I'm realizing that trigger now is just an opportunity to meditate. So I'm now viewing my work in the startup as a meditation. Can I detach from that outcome? Can I detach from that matrix that's within? Because it all stems from within, and the only matrix that really exists, I believe, is the one that we have within. And if I can release myself from that matrix, I'm going to make a better slide deck. I'm going to operate better in an investor meeting. And, you know, it sounds cliche too, and it sounds just maybe hocus pocus a little bit. And it's like, I was there. Like, I was that guy listening to something like this years ago, being like, well, how the fuck do I get present? How the fuck do I listen to my intuition? How do I trust my gut? And now that I've put in a lot of work and have truly seen the transformation that is possible, I can't help but waxing poetic about presence and beating a dead horse.
So what, that was a lot. That's a lot to unpack. And I love that answer. So I guess to sum it up, what I was hearing you say is that resistance primarily stems from attachment, like attachment to external things in general, like, being attached to an outcome, being attached to a result. But when you shift your focus to becoming present and changing your metric to, let's call it your KPI, like your KPI in life is now degrees of presence rather than Twitter followers or impressions or gold medals. Am I hearing you right?
For sure.
Yeah.
The external things, like, we've given the voice in our head an impossible task. That is, keep us safe. And that used to be keep us safe from the lions and tigers on the savannah. And now it's keep us safe from what other people might think of me. Keep us safe from not getting enough resources, not being a high status enough person. Keep us safe from not getting the type of girl we want to get. And that becomes this engine of growth in a direction that is not aligned ultimately. And I found that, like, I've been living in alignment in a way that I never thought was possible. But I'm also, like, as I said, working for the startup is the trigger. That's where the most resistance is. So instead of unskillfully, unconsciously approaching my work and the 1,000 tabs that I have open and clicking really fast and rushing, I take a step back. So maybe to answer your question and encapsulate it all, is like, for me, it's been rushing personally. I identified as someone that was an athlete that did everything really quickly, really efficiently. I'm a fucking performance-oriented individual. I get shit done and I do it quickly, and I'm just productive. And now I realize I would walk fast, eat fast, shower fast. Everything was fast. It was painful as fuck to meditate because it was like I convinced myself that my true nature was this finely tuned instrument for speed. And that is not the case. So when I rush, I realize that's my resistance. I'm rushing. Why am I rushing? And my coach, Lee, was like, where the fuck are you rushing to? He didn't say that, but he was like, where are you rushing to ultimately? Because you know that the future is imaginary. You know that nothing exists except for right here, right now. So if you're rushing, you're ultimately acting out of alignment. You're acting from a place that's fearful. So it's rushing out of fear. I would ski race out of fear. I would train too fast out of fear of not being fast enough. And the paradoxical thing that shot me in the foot was you got to train really slow to perform really quickly. And that's how endurance training works. Most 80% of your hours are going to be really, really, really slow. And then you're supposed to train slow when you're supposed to train slow and train fast when you're supposed to train fast. And I had this gray area drift between the two. And I'm now realizing that for me to slow down, to put a intentional smile on those two things, and then to ground myself in the breath and in the body, that's where I can release that resistance best.
Quote came up for me, and I actually posted it on my Twitter the other day. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. I believe that's I think it's Marine wisdom. I think it's from the U.S. Marine Corps.
It's from the Navy SEALs.
Oh, Navy SEALs. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't too far off then because there's a basketball player that I love, Nikola Jokic. He's a Denver Nuggets player. He's the best basketball player on the planet. And he looks like he's moving in honey. He moves so slowly, but he's the best because he's just taking in all the sensory information around him. And I think being sensitive is so important to all of this. And I don't mean being sensitive in the sense that a lot of men were sensitive, easy to cry. I mean sensitive in the sense that we are just utterly receptive to the field of consciousness and the field of information that's constantly around us. And I think if we're not slowing down, we can't be sensitive. We can't see the subtle shifts in energy that are all around us, that are happening constantly within us. And I've learned as well that as I become more aware of myself and the way that other people make me feel, the better my life becomes. And the better I am at listening to those signs and hearing those signals. What are your thoughts on sensitivity in the sense that I'm talking about? Do you feel like that's important to become an embodied person, being sensitive?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Sensitive, it's a good word. I haven't heard that word be used in this context, but I think it's powerful because I found that I was desensitized to a lot of things in my life, from rushing, from acting out of fear, from the driving energy being ultimately not pure, not great. The more I've slowed down, the quicker I've performed, but the more I've slowed down, the more sensitive to thought patterns I've become, the more sensitive I've become to how something makes me feel. And that's how I'm navigating with my intuition. So I was able to slow down over the past 4 months. I had made the decision, I'm going to put my name and face behind my brand. But I had to still slow down even further to really trust myself. So I'd made a decision, but I wasn't fully trusting of myself. But as I slowed down more and operated in a more effective way across all the platforms, across all of the things I'm doing, I came to a place where I woke up, last week, and I was letting life come to me instead of trying to get ahead of things. And well, that's a different tangent, I suppose, but like I slowed down enough to feel what it felt like to when I thought about what if I made my name and brand behind, but what if I said Nick Sweeney and showed my face? What does that really make me feel? And I was sensitive enough to feel like that's very aligned. I believe in that intuition. I believe that I trust that that's the right thing to do. When I made that decision and when I was about to, on the precipice of jumping and changing the profile picture and all this stuff, I felt like I'm very open to this. I'm very receptive. And that sensitivity is the metric. It's like, well, how do I feel when I'm with this girl? How do I feel when I'm working day to day on this business? How do I feel when I am driving through traffic and having a thought that might be detrimental if I wasn't sensitive, because I would not register it as well and I would ingrain it. I wouldn't release it. I wouldn't be sensitive enough to realize that like I'm closing up mentally and energetically versus, and I think this is where meditation comes in, is like your sensitivity is growing with each session of meditation, where you, of course, like for me, it was a long time of just sitting there twitching in pain and all these thoughts. It was super uncomfortable. I was super impatient. And that then slowly cycled out of me using the breath work in general, but also like just sitting there as still as possible, really, really still. And seeing how a certain thought made me twitch or made me close up or made me get out of the space before my next thought. It's like, oh, this thought's here. And instead of like either releasing it or skillfully holding it and being aware as I move through the thought pattern to like what it really is stemming from potentially, then I'd be able to like handle these things. The only meditation let me do that, I would say. Because I would say that running was meditation, or shower could be meditation. And that's true. Everything can be meditation. But getting still in the body and grounding yourself in the body, the more, there's a word where you're exteroceptive. So an exteroceptive meditation, you're very aware of the field. You're very aware of the birds chirping. You're very aware of the temperature in the room, what you taste, what you smell. Interoceptive is like, I'm super, super aware of my heartbeat right now. Super, super aware of how it feels to be my ass on this chair, how it feels to just be here. And as I got better at being interoceptive and then seeing how a thought affected that physical vessel, I ultimately was able to weed out a bunch of fucking weeds in my mental garden that were not serving me. A lot of them based in fear. And now I can operate in more of a place of faith. And that sensitivity over a long enough time, your brain rewires itself. You no longer have as many intrusive and negative thoughts. You no longer fall and get swept up into a fearful way of thinking or a fearful way of acting. You're able to discern between the two. And that's where all of this power is, I think, for an athlete, for a businessman, for anyone. Can you discern?
I love that. And a way I've always visualized meditation, because I've been meditating for 10 years pretty consistently. It's like if you look at a lake, like a windy lake, the top of the lake is always a little bit chaotic, like there's little eddies, there's little swirling bits that are on the surface of the lake. But when you go under the surface of the lake, it's just so chill. It's so when you observe underneath it and when you dive a little bit deeper, it's always really relaxed and tranquil and placid. And I can find that place in meditation. I think that there is a lot of power to just being still, especially if you're somebody like you or I. We're very energetic, we're athletes, we're moving at all times. I've also found meditation session, like today I actually did it. prior to our podcast, I went on a run. It wasn't even a long run, but I meditated after the run. I've noticed that if you still your body after you exercise and meditate, it's extremely powerful. Have you found that as well?
Yes. Yeah. I recently implemented a morning routine that I don't think I'll ever find a better one.
Hmm.
And that is extremely hard workout right when I get out of bed, first thing before I do anything. Um, maybe I'll go to the bathroom, but like first thing is really hard workout. And then immediately a 30-minute meditation. And I feel like it does a lot of things, but it opens you up. And then you get really still in the mind afterwards. So that sort of concentration of consciousness after a hard workout, I find to be so, because that's what you feel at the end of a workout. You're kind of blissed out. You got an endorphin high. Your
Hmm.
blood vessels are literally opened. They're dilated. And that also, I believe, is working on an energetic level where you're now way more open than you were. And to be in an open state and then get really still, that's when you receive these epiphanies and these downloads and these good ideas and these insights into your psyche. So I'm a massive, massive fan of working out, then getting really still. Or if you are in a closed place, then I always encourage people to incite a state change. And it's a physiological state change that then by default becomes a psychological state change. So you're not going to think your way out of some tailspin by sitting at your computer and
Hmm.
thinking your way out of it. You're just not going to, if something's fucking with you, then you're not going to wrestle that demon to the ground. You might wrestle him to the ground, but it's just going to be a closed thing. You want to open yourself back up. And so a state change could be a cold shower. It could be leaving what you're doing and doing something else like painting. Or breathwork, meditation, exercise are my go-tos because that makes changed physiologically. Your breath is different, your heart rate's different. And then you can sort of look at yourself from a bird's eye view versus be so absorbed in what you're wrestling with.
Hmm. So when in doubt, zoom out, essentially. Like zoom out, move your body. Yeah, I mean, this happens to me all the time. I have a corporate sales job where I sit right at this desk, and whenever I feel anxious, I just go outside. I get some sun. I go on a long walk, or I run, I sprint. You have to, I think to get out of the mind, you have to get into the body. Like there's really no other way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The more we're grounded in the body, the more present we are. The more
Mm-hmm.
you're aware of where you're at. That's
Mm-hmm.
when the here and now can really just unfold and reveal itself for you. Another
Mm-hmm.
thing is taking I believe that in a good way of explaining it is like your attention is fused to your awareness so often when you're doing work. And if you imagine it like a computer screen, like your attention is the cursor and you're
Mm-hmm.
just fully fused to that cursor. If you can unfuse the attention from the awareness and just feel that awareness and become aware of the entire computer screen all at once, then suddenly you can detach from some egoic, negative thought pattern much more skillfully and as you say, just zoom out, view yourself from a higher plane. And often though when we are so often working and we're focused on the cursor because we're our attention's fused and we're trying to get something done, that's when we can just spiral. And so to zoom out, when you're in doubt, to zoom out, you have to change something. It's hard to just zoom out right now. Your
Mm-hmm.
attention's fused to me right now. But if you can go one tactic I use is your peripheral vision. So if you unfuse from me right now and you see the entire field of your vision, and you intake that entire field and you hold that peripheral, and you potentially go for a walk in your peripheral vision, it's like a direct line to presence, that peripheral vision, because you are aware of the entire field that you can see at least. So you can use vision too to become present. Grounding yourself in the body is another way, but the vision is powerful because sometimes in a meeting, everyone in the meeting is very absorbed and their attention's fused to the slide deck or whatever. And you become unaware of the subtle energies that are going on or the environment. And for me, some investor meetings, I'll just be in the peripheral. No one knows. But I'm then I'm like intaking, oh, how is this guy really feeling? How are these guys really feeling? What's happening? But I'm not so absorbed with one particular facet of the field that I miss out on everything else.
Yeah, I remember, I forgot what it was, but I was in like elementary school and they illustrated a point that like they showed us this video and they told us to like keep our eye on it was like a purple ball. It was on a basketball court. And in the background, there was like a gorilla that ran across and like no one saw the gorilla because we were all just like looking at the ball. You know what I mean? And I think your practice is really valuable. There's also a series of books that I've been reading over the past few years. It's about shamanism. It's Carlos Castaneda, and it's about his forays into Mexican shamanism, like this ancient tradition of Yaqui knowledge. And the guy that he trained under, his name is Don Juan. And Don Juan has a lot of different practices. And a lot of the practices that he teaches him are visual, like the ways that you can alter your visual field because it's so central to our nervous system as human beings and the way that we perceive our environment and the way that we go about the world. It's like we take it for granted. We never even really think about it just because that's you can make a pretty good case that it's our primary perceptive mode. It's just like seeing. Obviously we have the other senses, but I think, Huberman, he talks a lot about how when you can see into the horizon, a far distance, it literally relaxes your nervous system the farther out that you can see. It's one of the primary reasons I think I like traveling up to the mountains here in Colorado. And I'm actually, this afternoon, I'm going up to the San Luis Valley, which is one of the biggest mountain valleys on the entire continent of North America. And I think that's one of the reasons I like it so much is because I can just look across the valley like nearly 100 miles and it just sets your mind at ease. So I think that's a really cool practice, man. I guess another question I have for you, tell me a little bit more about your spiritual practices. What does that look like for you?
Well, my spiritual practices are, I would guess that they're not very advanced. My spiritual practice that I do every day is when I meditate, I will give myself a sincere wish. So I will be like, may I be completely free from stress and suffering. And I will feel what that feels like. I believe that beauty and the divine are a direct line to God. Or beauty and love are direct lines to God. And so this first 15 minutes of my meditation practice is about giving myself love, letting the subtle flame of joy that lies within grow and allowing myself to feel that and relax into that. It's all about relaxing, I would say, my spiritual practice, relaxing into this moment, relaxing into that feeling that I can garner during the first 15 minutes. But then the next 15 minutes is like me giving a sincere wish to someone else or even a population of other people. So I gain all this love for myself, but in some ways it's easier to give love. And I will give love to, may my grandpa be completely free from stress and suffering. And I will just visualize a white light going directly from me to him and engulfing him. And a lot of spiritual practitioners will say that, like Rick Rubin, I think, even says, like, you first can give yourself a wish. You can give yourself a wish of love for your body, yourself, and then your room, and then your neighborhood, and then your state, and then blah, 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 blah. I kind of don't subscribe to that, in that I'm like, I can give love to the victims in the Middle East right now. And so I will visualize my energy just instantaneously shooting across the world to them, or engulfing the entire world. Like, snap, the whole world is absorbed in my white light of love, and I'm sending the entire world as much energy as I possibly can. And it's not a forceful act, but it's an act of relaxation, relaxing into it as much as possible. And so that's sort of the spiritual practice. And then I will be also repeating, sometimes I'll just repeat I am, and then I'll add certain things onto the back of that. I am, I am, I am, I am a fearless weapon of God's love. So I will repeat these things, and that will let that subtle flame of love and joy grow more within me. And then I pray to God at the end of those meditations and throughout the day. Like in the morning, the first thing I suppose that I do every morning is I pray to God. And I'd say, thank you, God, for the breath of this moment, the moment of this breath. Thank you, God, for this beautiful day full of possibilities. And thank you, God, for this life on earth. And it's sort of me right in the morning grabbing the reins of my consciousness in gratitude and in love. I am now sort of in control a little bit more, because I took the time to really, like, remember my place, remember who I am and what I am, and remember that, like, God has me, and I trust in him. I have faith in him. And that gives me, that incites the ability to go and do a really hard workout as an offering to God. I offer my flesh. I offer this session of torture to you. Priority number one is God. First thing, God as I pray right and when I wake up, God when I do the workout, and then God when I'm doing my meditation. So I'll finish every meditation with a prayer as well. And usually I'm just thanking God for simple things: health and safety of my family, health of my body, my ability to have an impact. Like, my food in my pantry, the clean water that I'm going to drink. And I would say that that's maybe a rudimentary spiritual practice, but that is where I can really center myself and then operate from a place of faith and trust throughout the rest of the day.
Question that comes up for me, and that's beautiful. And a question that comes up for me is, like, if you think about the word God, it perhaps might be the most loaded word in the English language. What do you mean by God?
For me, I have accepted that I don't know, but that I believe that there is a higher force, a higher entity. I like to think of God as, like, more of an individual person that's outside of me, that's outside of this I am, that's potentially an enabler to this one field of love. God is the one who split the one into the two. And when I then go into nature, that's when that's, to me, God is nature, is Mother Earth. I was raised without any religion really. But I was raised with Mother Nature being my religion and the mountains being my cathedrals. And for me, that's where I can get that direct line to God, because it's a manifestation of his work. It's his artwork. That's where it gets almost snagged for me, is like, well, Mother Nature, I believe, is feminine. I believe that's potentially like more of a manifestation from a feminine origin. But I believe that they're all morphed together in some way. And so when I can go out into the woods and just notice like how beautiful a tree is, or be very highly attuned in my senses and notice a bird chirping or a squirrel or whatever, that's when I can just feel like that all encompassing consciousness that I'm fully absorbed into. So yeah, the field is the field. When I'm in the city, it's still the field. It's still, we're swimming in this field of consciousness and divinity, but I feel it most when I go into nature. And that's when I can really be humbled by my place and recognize that this is all the workings of one thing, and almost like feel and meditate in nature and close my eyes and envision like the squirrel as this being of light, the tree as a being of light. I notice that the trees are aware of me, and then what energy am I putting out into these woods? And you realize that all of these things in nature, all of these living organisms, are in a state of just survival. And it's all very humbling and very beautiful to me. And I can sort of tap into that. And the more that I do that, the more I feel that I can get in touch with myself too, and my intuition and my core essence. And I believe that in a way too, like light is the driver of all of this life. That's another theory I'm researching. It's not a theory I'll ever fully prove out, but I believe that light is a mechanism for life. And potentially that light is the masculine side of these things. That light is the singular, infinite, unifying force. Whereas then maybe the polarities, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, electrons, negatives and positives, that's where all of that comes to play, but it's all enabled by that light. And that beauty can only be manifested because of that single unifying force that is light. So my spiritual practice is definitely developing a lot, and my conviction in God has been, it really started a year and a half ago, more than anything. At one point I went through a stage of nihilism. I always believed there was something going on. When I was a little kid, I'd pray to God. I'd be like, God, I didn't mean that thought that I just said, whatever. But now it's like, because I believe that you get a new lease on life when you give up and accept that you don't know what's going on, accept that you don't know the outcome, detach from that outcome, and just trust and just believe. And so the more I trust, the more I believe, and the more I'm in nature, the more I trust and believe, etc. So that's where my spiritual practice resides at the moment.
Got it. So for you, it sounds like God is pretty much everything. It's the thing that imbued us with life. It's the prime mover, the force that got everything started, and the force that's kind of like ever present. It's here with us now. It's here with us at all times. Yeah.
Yes.
That's certainly what God is to me as well. I think, have you ever heard of, so Einstein, he said he believed in the God of Spinoza. Have you ever heard of Spinoza's God?
No, but I'm listening to Autobiography on a Yogi again before I go to sleep. There was a chapter on, you mentioned Spinoza, but I was like off to sleep, so I don't know.
Well, it's essentially like Baruch Spinoza was this Dutch philosopher. I think he was in like the 1700s, maybe 1600s, and he said that literally the entire universe is God. You and I, we're just like cells. We're atoms of God, if you will. When you go out into nature, that's all God. And yeah, literally everything is God, like the infinite field of energy. That is what's God. Every little, and like we're just little nodes, on in the network right now. And that's the way that I've always kind of thought about it. Does that resonate? That idea?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think being barefoot, you're disconnected from God by the 4 inches of foam in a way.
Mm.
You can generate a deeper connection by getting closer and returning to nature. So yeah, no, I'm in absolute agreement with you.
That's beautiful. And I guess, like an hour, 20 minutes, I've got a little bit more in me. I know you do too. So I wanted you to just talk a little bit about the role like family plays in your life, because I know your brother, he's on X, you guys are roommates. Like, what role does family play for you in your own life? And your brother specifically, really, because I know you guys are super tight.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, family it's everything to me. It's what brings me the most joy. I've been blessed with an extremely loving family, an extremely strong and powerful dad, and then an extremely loving and nurturing mom. And then I'm the oldest of 4. So I believe that I hold a good amount of responsibility there, being the oldest. And family, I believe, I I always have tried to embody my best self and act as my best self and be a good person and be a good role model for my siblings as well. And it's a huge driver, huge motivation. Like, I want to provide for my family and my extended family. That's a huge motivator. I want to be a good son, and I want to be a brother to my siblings that they trust and look up to. And we have such a loving and compassionate relationship between all of us. And there's of course things that happen between siblings that are difficult. Interfamilial dynamics are difficult at times, but we're all we've been raised in a way that's made it so that we can be really rational and know what's most important. And these things that might get in between us, we all realize they're not important, and we can work through it. And what's most important is that we love each other and that we're there for each other and we support each other. And like, a personal story is this fall, my brother, who's going to school in Spain right now, just went missing for like 72 hours. And it was his birthday. He missed his exam. We had the embassy call. They kicked in his door. He wasn't there. We got a video from him that Sunday of him taking a video on top of a building, which he didn't know was a governmental building. And so he ended up being arrested and thrown in the slammer with no phone call. And 72 hours passed. No one knew where he was. And that was a really terrifying experience. And there's a lot of fear wrapped up in me. And that's why I pray most every day, just for the safety of my family, because it's terrifying for me to think. And I know that I would be able to get through it. And I know that ultimately, we're all mortals and things happen. I don't want to attract any of that kind of stuff. I want to just, it's a driver though, for me to be as present and as loving and as good of a son and a sibling as possible. Because ultimately, during that time, the whole family was a mess. I mean, I was fucking pulling the metadata from his video, finding his coordinates. My sister was like in Thailand up all night trying to scraping up security camera footage. My dad held the frame in a way that I just am in disbelief still to this day of how he conducted himself in such a strong and assuring and powerful way. Because my mom, of course, was a bit of a mess naturally. And it just, to me, it's so so clear to me that it's just so important. And so it's what makes life worth living. And if you don't have a family, then be assured that there is a family out there for you, friends and mentors and people that can give you that sense. And I'm not going to pretend to know what that's like. I can only empathize to a certain level. I've just been blessed. And I believe that that blessing should be used in a skillful, benevolent way, where at one point I had a realization that I was really like dropping the ball as an older brother and as a son, and I wasn't communicating with them as much, and I wasn't being the type of, like, I wasn't grateful enough. And I sat with the idea of like my parents dying for a while in the woods for like 6 hours, barefoot, of course. And that was such a transformative experience. It's like, you're missing out on what's really important here. You're so absorbed with being this big ski racer guy, being this big business tycoon, that you're missing out on what's really fucking matters. And when you look back on life, like, will you be deeply satisfied with how you conducted yourself as a son and as a sibling and as a person? And now in recent years, I'm able to look back and be like, I really am deeply satisfied with how I am within the family and a part of it, and how I am supporting and bringing the whole family up to heightened levels as well. But yeah, it's definitely everything for me. And then me and my brother, we are he's been so, he doesn't even fucking know. He's in the other room right now, but he introduced me to breath work. He introduced me to meditation. He is such a powerful individual and is operating at such a high level of consciousness. I don't even know how much he realizes it, but he really is. He's such a powerful individual, and he is such a complementary energy for me, because I'm like the go driven, like I get stressed out. I used to get stressed out. These are things that are changing. This, like, how I identified as an older brother was like stressed out and carrying the burden of the family's problems and all this stuff. And I'm now just been releasing it and trusting that my siblings can be safe. When my sister's in Thailand alone, or my brother's in Spain alone, like, I trust them and I have faith that they know the right things to do. But my brother and I have just been synergistically elevating each other in many ways. I think I complement him and he complements me, and we're both, we're writing online and putting our truth out there. He's building a business. I'm part of a startup. Like, it's very fun to really connect with him on a deep level and live with him here in Austin, because life happened. I went to a different college. He went to CU Boulder. I went to DU. Life happened where you're no longer with your siblings anymore. You're no longer talking to your parents very much. And yes, we are blessed to like all go to school in Colorado and be able to coalesce together for holidays and that kind of thing. But it became very apparent to me that it's super important to stay in touch, to make the effort. It's easy to be like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't call my mom today. But ultimately, that's like the most important thing that I can do. And yeah, it's I'm very blessed, and I thank God every day.
Beautiful, man. Family is everything. And I wholeheartedly agree. Like, one of my most important daily routines, if not the most important, is just calling my mom. Sometimes she annoys me, but whenever I zoom out, I'm like, literally everything she's saying is from this place of just pure unconditional love. And normally, like, I think unconditional love, that term, gets thrown out too much. But I think that family and like maternal and paternal love, like, I think that is like the only form of unconditional love that really exists. Like, I don't really think, like, there's always conditions to love. Like, even if you have like a best friend, like, there's a point that they could push you, most likely, where, they could sever that. But I think with family and with God, like, that is pure unconditional love. And I think when you tap into God, you tap into this infinite reserve of just loving awareness. Ram Dass talks about that a lot. Like, I am loving awareness. And I think that's a very practical and powerful reminder for all of us. Man, we've been going on an hour and a half. I think I'm going to cut it soon. Nick, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Give me and the audience some closing remarks.
Well, one closing remark that came up when you just said that was unconditional love can also come from just yourself. You can unconditionally love yourself. And at least a lot of men that I work with, and myself included, that's what I'm always striving for. And I think that's really important too. You have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. And so, that's my closing remark.
Love yourself.
Yes.
Beautiful, man. Yeah. And I really don't think that there's like enough love and enough gratitude that we can give the world and God and ourselves, like for being here. It's such an honor to be alive, and to be a human. I don't think, I'm just going to leave it there. Love yourself, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. If you made this far, this has been the Tommy Christie Show, signing out.
All right.